figure out how to fix it. Right, so before we get started, Andrea very politely sent me the email with tomorrow's schedule on it, and I panicked a little bit because I'm really bad at reading those Excel file schedule things, but it looked to me like somebody could easily think there's one group for 1 hour, and then a different group for the next hour, and that's not right. An hour's not enough time. So here's the schedule, which I think Andrea actually corrected, set clarification around, right? But just in case, this is how it's going to work. Unless we change it. Unless it isn't. Which, yeah, haven't fixed it yet. Okay, there's one set up in the back. They actually did have someone in the room, so we have to see on that back table? Yeah. If it didn't have a name on it. Okay, yeah. Okay, so for the new people, I hope what you saw yesterday made some sense at all. But this is where we left off, so somebody who's flipping to the right page, can you tell them what page we're on? They vote?
Yes, that's correct. Oh, what page? 14.
Page 14 in the PowerPoint, and the other one is going to be the beginning of, well, the end of 2. I've got one more slide on this. So, page 6 should start with exercise 3. And I'm sorry, you guys. Just don't let this freak you out. If you really aren't supposed to be able to just walk into this after missing, even if you kind of watched it online. I would expect you to have problems unless you've done this before, so don't worry about it. Don't panic. It'll be fine. We'll all get through it soon. Okay, so we get into this one last slide for a point sample, which was what we did with the lines. First in the A exercise as a group, not identifying individuals. And then in the B exercise, identifying individuals. Okay? But both of those were point sample, which is one of the time sampling methods. If you use point sample, you can get, yes, it's an estimated duration, the amount of time spent in behaviors, but it's, as we spoke yesterday, a really, really good estimate if you do it well. You're not going to get anything about bouts, frequency, sequencing, latency. You will get a list of only state behaviors because you're not going to catch enough of the events on the beat no matter how much you try. Okay? So, limited, but number 1, which is usually one of the top things of interest with enrichment studies, it's brilliant at that. And it's so easy to do. And you can have 20 people. I've been on studies where we've had literally like 30 different people taking data. And in the next set type we try, we have a really hard time getting good, it's called inter-observer reliability, good reliability, so you see what I see. But with this, our requirement was 98% agreement before anybody's allowed to take data. Everybody did it, bam. Okay, it's that easy to do as well. Okay, and it's really, really easy to analyze. You just convert everything into percent and graph away. Okay? So it is a favorite for sure. So before we go on to 3, does anybody have any questions we didn't get to yesterday for either the 1-0 or the point sample? Okay, awesome. All right, now. You're actually going to work in pairs on this exercise because it's just too dang hard to do by yourself. This is the, I'm dating myself, but we used to say the Cadillac up because at the time that was like the cool car. This is the best way to do it, okay? Because you get everything. You miss nothing, all right? And so this is, now we've moved on to the continuous sampling. And this is the traditional all-occurrence methodology that you use with a timestamp. So with your phones, if you put them on the, I think it's called stopwatch on iPhone, Yeah, stopwatch, and you get a bunch of zeros, and when you hit start, it just starts counting up. Okay? Ignore the division, just do minutes and seconds. Don't worry about hundreds of seconds. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the program in just a second. You're going to write down everything you see this grader doing, and you're going to write down the time it starts. Okay? So if there's speed foraging, which she is doing in the beginning, you're going to write 00 speed forage. Okay? And then when she does something else, you have to write down the time that the new behavior starts, so you know that feed forage ended and the new behavior started. Okay? Watching an animal on the video or in life, looking at the stopwatch, and writing on your paper, you're going to miss a lot. And so that's why we let you, for this first time, work in pairs. The group who is doing this, there may be two of you, will not be allowed to work in pairs. You just have to suck it up. It won't be so complicated. So the epigram should look very familiar. I think you've done everything except alert at this point, right? Guys over here yesterday? Okay. Alert is really an event, or a state-like event behavior. So if she does an alert and then right away goes to something else, I just assume a 1 second minimum. You can't score less than a second for a behavior. So if she does alert in the locomote, just write, 0.51, alert, 0.52, locomote. Okay? A lot of you are going to be confused. That is the one escape from reality, but it's just a practicality, because if you had it on videotape, then you could go back and forward and get the 100th of a second, but to be honest, it's not that important to us if she locomotes 1 second or less out of 10,000. Okay? So basically, you're going to go through, you're going to watch did I have this in right? Yeah. It's written wrong in your PowerPoint slide, and I also think on your exercise book. And I have no idea what brain I was in when this happened. But this is wrong. One person of the pair will watch the video and literally never take your eyes off the video. The other person will never see the video, even for a second, because you're watching the timer. And when the first person sees new behavior, they call it out to you or whisper or whatever. Okay? Feed forage. As soon as you hear that, you look at the time, you take your eyes off the timer, write down 0.52 feed forage, and then you look at the timer again, get ready for the next thing that comes in your ear. Do not pick your head up. Okay? Don't panic. We're going to do it twice so you can switch. Okay, so everybody will do both jobs.
Walking into a
I don't have any. I love it when people pay attention. The question is, if she's walking and eating, what do you record? To be fair, I don't think she ever does that. I think she only walks and forages. Forages and feeds at the same time. But let me see. It says while walking. Yeah. You're right. That would be a problem. And what I was telling guys, so there's a problem in the ethogram. Okay. Remember, these are crap, right? So the question is, if she's locomoting and eating, as elephants I want to do, at the same time, what do I record? Okay. Now, I don't actually think that happens in this video, which is why I never paid attention to it, because she does forage and eat at the same time. You'll see that for sure. But they're the same. okay? What I would do, and you can do this because it's continuous all occurrence, is I would write the load plan. So I'm going to go into a little more detail about start and stop times. So especially if she started, I'm eating and then I'm walking and eating. Okay, so then I would mark the start time of walking and eating. And then if she ends one before the other, I would actually note that in comments. Okay, eating ended at blah, 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 walking continued. Okay. Now, a lot of people, when they do this, you may recall yesterday when Kelly's was doing the ethogram portion of the lecture, she mentioned that your ethogram does not have to be exhaustive for some stuff, and all occurrence is one of them. Exhaustive means that every possible thing they could do is covered by the ethogram. Okay? That doesn't need to be true for all occurrence. If you score a start and a stop time for every behavior, okay? So in that case, you have two columns, right? Start time, locomote, stop time. And then maybe you have a break before there's another start time, and you know that in that break, they were doing something we don't care about. That's not on the ethogram, okay? But if you go back and look at the PowerPoint slide, it says it's not necessary, it's not required, but it may be easier if you have that other in there, because then you don't have to score stop times. Because you will always have a new behavior to score, even if it's just other thing that I'm not interested in, you still have start time for that. And so you don't have to write the time twice, just once. So your choice, they both work, as long as you understand what you're doing. Somebody had a question?
I'm confused because it says for feed forage, it says foraging may include walking while sniffing ground and other things. And then locomote says bear travels, but it's not foraging. So
Correct.
I don't see the problem.
What she's saying is if they're chewing food without foraging, they're just, I don't know. I'm fighting with you, I don't see the problem, but it is a legitimate question, and if one's concerned, you want to identify that even though feed isn't a behavior, I still want to identify that she's feeding while she's locomoting for whatever reason, and not foraging. I can do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so, everybody understands there's two jobs. One of you watches the video, nothing else. One of you watches the time on the paper, nothing else, right? Okay, so just with the person you're sitting next to, you guys have done that well. At least you're off the hook. So, there's no beep, right? Because continuous time on the stopwatch. So basically it's going to look like this. At 00 she's speed forward, and I can tell you that's true. And then the behavior changes. Something happens at 51 seconds in, alert. Oh, and the comment is, oh my God, all these motorcycles went by. And then right away she locomoted, but I have that 1 second minimum rule. So I just write down 52, locomote, running away from motorcycles. And now she goes on for another 14 seconds before she starts speed forwarding again. Okay? Remember yesterday I said the ones that we have scored in the example book may not be right because it depends on when you start the timer. Right? That's not true for this, unless we've made a mistake. It should be right. The only thing that might be different is the actual time, start time might change. It may be 38 seconds when she starts the alert, because you guys start your timer later than us. But the differential from one step to the next should always be the same. Okay? All right. Are you guys ready? For those of you, it occurred to me when I was driving up here, some of you may actually know this bear. Because she's from between Yosemite, Yellowstone and Grand Teton. sometimes there's that whole 40 kilometers of General's Highway there that there's nothing on, but her. Anyway, if you know her, she's birth 62, her mom was birth 300. And this is when she was only 3, before she had all the kids she's had since. So, ready? Everybody know what your job is? Which one you're doing? Okay. Don't look up when people laugh or anything, because you'll get to see it. Okay. Guys, if you go to Sequoia or Yellowstone or whatever to see these bears in the spring, okay? That's pretty good. You all seem to be calling the same thing at the same time. That's a plus. Okay, so before we pass debrief, just let the other people watch the video so they know what we're talking about. Okay, so just switch jobs. Guys, ready? I'm sorry about this sort of Blair Witch thing. I was actually driving a car while I was filming this. Very slowly, but nonetheless. If I had stopped, the ranger would have kicked me out. Ready?
I'm not doing it all. Okay. This one. Best enrichment ever.
How'd you like that? Hard, easy? Or easy with two people? Yeah. Everybody agree with that? As long as we have two people, it's pretty easy? Yeah. Okay. But now think about doing it by yourself.
That's kind of what we were doing.
That's a lot harder. Especially when you have a lot of activity. Sorry. Okay. The cool thing about this, it's hard, but it gets everything. You don't miss anything, right? And even if you don't care about that behavior, then you have this other, or inactive, or not visible. You just write that in, and you have got absolutely everything. So this is the gold standard. So you have something that looks like this, and your tally sheet is going to look something like this. This one time, Adam, I'm going to... No, I have plenty. You want to track the bout orders when you tally. You don't want to just add up all the seconds in one behavior or not. Okay? You want to track the bouts. So I list them in order. Feed forage. The first feed forage was 51 seconds. The second one was 79. Third one was 8. Fourth one was 25. And the last one was 19. And so on. Okay? Then you total the number of seconds for each behavior. Add them all up. And this video is 227 seconds long. Okay? Which also is a very short observation here. It has only a few minutes. It's less than 6 minutes. All right? Does that make sense to everybody? If you, excuse me, in this case, your data entry, yes, you're going to do those numbers, enter those numbers. But if you're interested in bouts, frequency or average length, you're going to have to enter individual data. Okay? Actually, that's not true. As long as you make sure you know how many bouts there were in the total time, you're going to average it anyway, so you don't have to individual. You'll have to add the number of bouts tied to each of those totals in your data, in your Excel spreadsheet or whatever. Okay? So here's an example of the kind of data we can get out. Let's look at the bear's activity. So that was a wild bear, but let's pretend that was a captive bear and that was the enrichment condition. We're studying food enrichment. Okay? And let's pretend we have a baseline. So we want to look at the number of minutes, I converted it to minutes, out of all of our baseline observations, that the bear was feed forage, for example. Okay, baseline conditions, food and dishes, enrichment conditions like what you saw. That's really easy. Out of a total in baseline of 600 minutes, you got 80 of them were feed forage. Do the math, which we can do later if somebody wants. Basically, it's just 80 divided by 600 and then times the 100 for the percentage. And you get 13.3% bad. Okay, and you do that for each of them. Remember, this is just an activity budget. We're not looking at bouts right now. Okay? So you get something like that, and you can do the activity budget, baseline and enrichment, just like always. But you'll notice this time, the label is percent time, not estimated. Because it's not estimated. You know to the second, literally to the second, how long she spent in each of those behaviors. Okay? And that's the difference between continuous and time sampling methods. Okay? This is exact. Make sense? But since we've done all this work, we could have done this with point sample, right? We did do this with point sample with the lines, all right? Why we go to all the work? Because we're interested either in exact, which you won't be, or we're interested in something else, okay? And for example, the bout lengths. Okay? So another hypothetical data set is we look at the number of minutes, as we said. Out of 600, how many minutes were feed forage? And how many bouts were they? On average, that means any given bout on average would be expected to be 5.3 minutes. Yeah? Okay. And same thing for enrichment. So now we have two numbers, each in a different condition that we can compare again. Okay? So, this is a hypothetical data set, so not surprisingly. Feed forage, it goes up, and then put enrichment. Okay? Make it? And then another thing you can do is look at the frequency of the bouts. how often does she start to feed her forage, right? So we look at, sorry, this is baseline, not body lines here, I apologize. And that should be enrichment and enrichment. Sorry, all of these should be enrichment ones. And all these are baseline ones, you might want to fix that. It doesn't matter how often you go through copy editing, you always find something, right? Okay, so out of 15 feed forage bouts, I converted them originally to the number per minute, but that's an awkward number, so I converted them to the numbers per hour. So in any given hour, you would expect her to feed forage 1.5 times. Or three times in 2 hours. Okay? May not be so important with feed forage. Maybe it is. But it could really be important with something like aggression. Right? Do they have one aggressive thing that's set off by something that we can identify that lasts for 10 minutes? Or do they have, in the course of an hour, 15 short bouts, each of which could have a different stimulant? We started, each of which lasts for like 10 seconds. Right? Completely different situations to manage. So this is an example of when this might be something you want to look at. Okay? And now we have numbers we can grab. Like I said before, I'm not giving you everything you can get out of those data. Okay? I'm just telling you some examples of things that these data are good for and maybe even better for than some of the other examples we looked at. You can get anything you want out of timed all occurrence. All that, by the way, you can see the mistake I caught there. It says estimated, no, you get exacted. Okay? And there's some examples. And in fact, you'll note that nothing is crossed off on this slide. You get everything that everybody ever seems to want to look at. Okay? The only problem I have with it is in these, if you really want to know all of the event behaviors that they might do, you will see them, as we saw with alert. You will see them, okay? But if you're, for some reason, interested in these really, minutia behaviors and manipulating objects come to mind, Did she use her claws? Did she use her pads? Did she use her lips? Did she use her tongue? Did she use her teeth? Did she, all of those are different behavior. You're going to have a hell of a time catching all of those and not missing something while you're writing and thinking about what it is and all that, okay? So if it's really important, that there's your videotape. It's really what you want to do. Or go way back to the beginning, the first exercise, 1-0 is better at catching that stuff than anything else. And in my opinion, it's kind of the only thing it's good for. Okay? All right. Questions on this one? So this is really the best method by far. But it's really hard to do. A little bit of a pain in the butt to analyze. Not that bad, but a little bit. Okay? And hard to get reliability on. If you have different observers. If you two watch the video at the same time and there was, a little more event behaviors, you guys probably wouldn't be writing down at the same time. You might catch all the behaviors, but your durations probably wouldn't be matched. Okay? You okay? Ready to start. Oh, thumbnails.
If you had lots of different observers and they all, got the same behaviors, but it was different time intervals, could you take the time intervals from all of them and average them? Or would that be totally inaccurate?
I would really have to think about that. I think I'd have to know a lot more what you guys think, you Davis people. Sorry, Davis.
No.
I don't,
First of all, when you're talking about multiple observers, you're probably not going to be watching at the same time. Maybe initially to figure out how close you are to each other. So that's a problem, right? Because you have different people watching at different times and they're watching differently. So if you feel that you're confident you're doing something similar, then it's okay to have more than one person. But I think what you're talking about is if you had like 3 people watching the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
Which you're probably, who has time for that?
good point. Yeah, I mean, there are things called observer interreliability tests, and on any project that has more than one observer, you're going to publish. You need to do those tests to prove that you, everybody on the project are actually scoring the same behaviors the same way. And on the big project I was on, the way we did that is there were 3 staff members who were trained, okay, and we all scored the same way. And then every volunteer that came and went, and we had like, I don't know, 50 of them over, several years. Everyone who came and went had to work with at least one of us and literally stand in front of the enclosure and take data. And then we would go back and compare them. And you look at different differences, and you're only allowed a certain percentage of differences to be able to do it alone. So that's how we did it. Which is kind of the commonest way to do it, right? Yeah. Okay. I don't see enrichment studies needing this rigor very often, but I wanted you to see how cool it is that it can do everything. Because the next one we do, okay, which when we get to the video is the video I can't record. The next one we do is much easier, using a combination of a couple of different methods, and you get almost the same results.
Oh, yeah.
So this is what I do it, because I'm late too long. So, and yet I'm sorry, but Adam's going to have to not record the video because I have permission to use it, but not distribute it. Okay. So, if you guys have been hanging in pretty well. By now, I usually have several people who are like, glazed over completely and really looking like, dear God, somebody pull a fire alarm. But if you just had it, try, and if you just want to give up and watch the cute video, that's fine. That's why I use the cute video, so you can end up with something fun. All right. So this is a young panda who has 3 different substrate piles. Substrate piles, my thing, you remember that. When we get to the video, there's slide stuff. I'll tell you, don't worry. Alfalfa, pine shavings, and wood chips, or mulch, I call it, but damn was a bad letter. So we're going to watch her, and we're going to use intervals of 20 seconds. Okay? And we're going to do a combination of all occurrence, but without the stopwatch. That's what, and we're going to do a point sample. So the point sample, I'll come back. This isn't working. So the point sample, you score on the beat. And in between the beats, you just write down all occurrences of the behaviors that we care about. Okay? Well, I used to have you do 3, but they said there was no point in it, so we only have to do 2. You can thank her later. But each of those systems has its own ecogram. All right? So the all occurrence ones are events, or like this. They're the quick ones. I don't want you to try and get times on them. Just tell me how many times they happen and what order they happen in. All right? And then the point sample ones, you know all of those already. Okay? The all occurrence ones are new, except for sniff. I don't think you have any of those. So I'll give you a minute to look those over in your book, and then we'll make sure you know how you're going to score, and then we'll run the video.
So basically, I guess, yesterday we're going to put sample in quantity. And then I guess
How long?
okay.
Portion.
But yeah, yesterday we were doing like So like every 20 seconds, it would be like we have to write down what's happening. Which is what I'm doing. And then examples every minute, and just writing down exactly.
Okay, are we good? We're actually, unfortunately, running behind time, so.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so, again, it's called all occurrence of some behaviors. The ethogram are the some behaviors. Don't care about anything else. All right? But all occurrence means every single time they do that thing, you have to write it down, and you have to write them down in order if you want sequence. All right?
Is that the lead?
No, sorry, we're just talking about all occurrence right now, which is in between the beats.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
So there's no time reference whatsoever on all occurrence.
Well, we know that this happened in 20 seconds, but that's it. You're correct. There's no useful time reference. And you don't need, if you're not doing the beats for the point sample, you don't need intervals at all. You just write them like a book. Okay? And just keep going to the end of the observation period. All right? But you're not fussed about time, and that's what makes it easy.
Okay, so I understand that all occurrence inside the interval, but on the beat, you do the point sample?
That's where I'm going, yep.
Okay.
So on the beep, you look at that other ethogram, which is all behaviors you know from yesterday. Okay? And you, on the beep, it's only one animal, score what she's doing. And then immediately keep going. You don't score a new one like you did in 1-0. If she's sniffing before, during, and after the beep, you'll score it before, you'll score other active or whatever on the beep, and then you score nothing because she's still doing the same sniff. Right? It doesn't really matter what interval she's in. Like with 1-0, it's the only one where you would score it again. With me? Okay. I think, what did it have? A 3-second rule for breaking bouts? Yeah. So they have to do something else for more, 3 seconds or more for that bout to stop. Okay, so to end that sniffing bout, she has to have done something else for 3 seconds. If she goes back to sniffing, it's all the same bout if it's less than 3 seconds. Okay? All right. So that's the first thing. Now we're going to mix it up a little bit, unless you guys are really freaked out and just want to stay with this program, that's fine. You have 2 options for tagging the enrichments, and these are things you're really going to want to get used to doing with enrichment. It's one of the most important things, I think, to tag behaviors with. If you're not real sure, just either enrichment or not enrichment. Okay? And because it's not, it's an either or, anything that's in contact, not directed towards, but in contact with the enrichment, you score -E. Okay? So I could be sniffing over here, but if I'm touching the enrichment, you would score -E. Sniff -E, exactly. Behavior sniff, but I'm touching the enrichment. I realize there are a lot of behaviors you want what it's directed towards, and we did that in the, I think it was in the lion one, but we purposely did the contact only here. To keep it easier. Okay? Remember, a lot of stuff we do here is to show you a lot of different options. You have so many options. I don't want to just teach you the same thing, because it's not good, one thing doesn't fit all. Okay? And so whatever works for you, right? I want you to sort of see all the different things that are out there so you can pick and choose what you like and what gets you where you want to go. For those of you who are like, yeah, piece of cake, I can do this, I need a challenge, I want you to tag one of 4 things. Which enrichment pile it is, or something else. Okay? Now this is important because it's not as simple as just tagging behaviors. It's changing the behavior. So, this is the one where you're just specifying whether it was enrichment or not. Okay? And you'll notice here, there's 2 in a row that are exactly the same. And that's fine. because there was a break of at least 3 seconds. So rolled, did something else, picked your nose, whatever, for 3 seconds or more, and then rolled again.
What was an other active field?
Other active is not on the all occurrence to the ground. That would be way too hard. Okay?
What is the anoint behavior?
Can I come back to that?
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, now you'll notice down, oh no. Did I lose it? I did lose it somehow. Let's pretend this last letter is an S dash E. Okay? So what sniff, nothing, and sniff, touching enrichment, are now 2 different behaviors. Okay? So sniff, score it. Now it's a new behavior. Break for 3 seconds. Now we're back to sniff. Those are all different behaviors because you're tagging them. So you just double the number of behaviors you have on your all occurrences. Make sense? If doubling's not enough, you can quadruple it by saying, see, sniff alfalfa, sniff woodpile. Different behaviors. Sniff non-enrichment, and sniff pine shaves. 4 different behaviors. Okay? Okay. Your choice, which, no tags, 2 tags, 4 tags. Your choice. Back to the ethogram. Annoyance, was it? I can point it out to you when you see it. Obviously, you don't look at sunbears either. Right?
No,
Sunbears are famous for this. Yeah. So, sunbears do it with their fruit. It's hilarious. With their food all the time. So, they smear themselves, lathering up with something. And you'll see this where she picks things up. You know, they don't have a bathroom, but they might as well leave. And they just pick all this stuff up in their hands.
okay.
Rub it all over. All right.
The easy way to do it is just to
Okay. I'm not going to turn my watch on, but I can watch the time and call out the beep off of a different time device. So do you want us to call out the 20 seconds? So you have the 0 time? And because my throat is going, I'm going to put Curly's in charge of beeping one. So it's not a countdown timer, you just have to beep when it's 20 seconds. Everybody ready?
Are we doing this in partners again, or?
No.
Okay.
That's the whole point. And you can do this by yourself a lot easier and get almost the same results.
Start.
This is what she does with alfalfa all the time.
Beep. Beep. Beep.
What's that? hold, you should grab it here.
Beep. 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 Beep.
So, about 3 or 4 days ago on the news, they had the cubs that Finland just got from
Beep.
China. You can stop, sorry. Sorry. Out in the snow, and they had a video on the news. I'm like, oh, that's all the same thing. Just roll around in the snow. So, how hard was that? Barry? Did you say Barry?
It was very hard, because I kept losing my slide.
Yeah.
But then I had to memorize all of these in 5 seconds.
Okay.
I think once you get into it and you're familiar with
They're your animals,
behaviors,
you know the
it becomes
behaviors.
probably very easy very quickly.
And if I ran this again, which I don't have time to do today,
Yeah.
if I ran it again already, it would be fine.
I also didn't know how to read a pile all the time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should just listen to that. Sorry. That was mine.
If you have trouble keeping track of the lines, sometimes it will find it more helpful to do one table first. So you report on the beat, then you fill in the line, and then when the points are up, you're done with it down. That can be more helpful. Yeah, good.
Whatever works for you, as long as you all use the same one. Okay, so, but, do you understand, does it make sense that if you knew the animals, you knew the behaviors, which you would because you'd be writing behaviors, right? That it would be easier than the bear and the wild one? With even just one person?
I was gonna say that, like, the hardest part is if you already knew your ecogram and your codes, that's half the battle. Because
Exactly.
most people take up behaviors.
Exactly.
Codes.
Yeah. But people who've worked with bears, any bear cub is going to be like this. Okay, so people who've worked with bears before would be able to agglomerate onto this. Yummy.
I'm just gonna say, I wrote the codes next to my chart, and so
Try that in addition.
One thing I did forget to mention, just a minute, is from the description and even the visual, if you're not used to theirs, it is a little, especially if you're like a primary person, it is a little worrisome, this, right? These are kind of behaviors that we look for that show a high level of stress, you know, the roller coaster, you know, and stuff, right? And hang on, Val, you're calling that enrichment, but have you just freaked her out, right? And the interpretation that we all put on this based on a whole lot of things, with a whole lot of theirs, is that she is aroused, not sexually, she's just highly excited, but it's not that. It's not a stress, it's not response, it's not a negative reaction to an external stimuli, okay? It's just, she's so excited, she's going to go somehow, okay? And we see, like I said, I just saw the same thing with the cubs rolling around in the snow in Midland, okay? All the same, you know, they just, it's got to. So this was actually considered a very positive thing for all the years we watched these things.
What is an instance in this kind of, like, when would you use this type of data? And what kind of research are you trying to do? You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Again,
And this is actually
you understand how you vote, right?
Yeah.
together.
What am I trying to accomplish?
So, really nice segue. Basically, you get all the duration stuff from the point sample, same as you do for lines. But you catch events with the alternates. And on that last slide, I'll show you the things you get for each one. Okay, so just hang on. And if we get to that last slide and you still have a question, ask again. Okay? All right, so your data sheet should look something like either this or this. Your tally sheet, for which you have, for the specifying enrichment versus non, should be the all occurrence you see. It's on one side, right? Those behaviors with enrichment, those behaviors that weren't in contact, and the point sample, same thing. In contact with enrichment, not. Okay? So that's your daily tally. Or if you did 4 things, then it's just, you add a couple more columns. All right? So what kind of thing can you use this for? Bouts. We just talked about bouts for the first time with the wild bear, but you actually can look at bouts because you record all occurrences of the all occurrence behaviors. All right? So once again, we can get an average. If I had 15 out of 600 minutes, it's 1.5 an hour. Okay? You can walk through the math if you're not there. All right? And once I know that, I can look at, if I'm tagging the enrichments, the different enrichment items, I can look at, this was her average bout length, or I'm sorry, bout number, I can't get bout length, frequency of roll with 3 different substrates. Okay? Of annoying with the 3 different substrates, and so on. And you can really quickly see kind shavings was always, not just in this, but always, the favorite. Okay? So that's one thing that you can't do with point sample. Okay? You don't get bouts and you don't catch events. Another thing you can do is a straight out activity budget, just like from the point sample, just like we did with the lines. Okay? This line is highlighted for something we'll do later if we have time, so don't worry about that. So again, how many? 7 out of 600, turns out to be 1.17%. Ding, 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 did math, and there you go. This is this is the behavior with each substrate. So it's not just one line for locomote with enrichment and baseline, it's one line for each of the 4 options in enrichment only condition. Okay, you're not comparing conditions, you're comparing what happens when the enrichment is out there. So, How does each behavior differ with the different substrates? Make sense at least at some level? Basically, because we're using two different methods, we get the benefit from both of them. So we can get the time in each behavior. Remember, it's an estimate from the point sample. I tried to put down where you get it from. You get it from the point sample. So it's an estimate, but it's a darn good one. Okay? We can get the exact frequency. Even though we didn't time it, we still know exactly how many there were within a period of the observation period, which is a certain period of time, which you would know what that is. Okay? So we know the exact frequency. And I had forgotten this till Kylie's pointed it out to me, but we also have the exact sequence, if you've taken it correctly. We always know what behavior followed what behavior. Okay? So you can go through and do an analysis there. I didn't give you the data set for it, but you know, hold is always followed by a bite 38% of the time. Okay? If you care. And again, for aggression, you might want to know what behaviors precede aggressive attacks. You know? There is nothing for latency, you're not going to get that, but you will get a good list of behaviors, not only states from the point sample, but any of the all-occurrence behavior events that you're interested in as well. Okay? Wait, I'm sorry, hold on. Did I answer your question?
Sort of.
Okay.
I guess this is something to do through, like, if you're doing something with choices, maybe, choices enrichment, or choice food, or whatever. It's not something you're just going, this is my either, and I'm going to look, see what I can see.
No.
So,
Your ethogram is going to be written to answer your research question.
right, I guess I just didn't know where a question was before we
In one of the recent lectures, individual enrichment lecture we did the last time I was up here, we talked about preference testing, which you just mentioned in choices, okay? And that is exactly the kind of thing, which is what the subject file was. Okay. It's exactly the kind of user. To be honest, I do this, I never just take my sample. It's boring. I always want to figure out, so even if it's just aggression, I always track something else in an all-occurrence way. Yeah.
One thing that comes to mind for me is if you had something where you're trying to increase species typical behavior or just activity, but you also wanted to increase species typical behavior, so you were trying to capture all of the different behaviors that were happening. And you could see in that the shavings had a much more positive effect. So if all you were after was to increase activity, then you might not need that all-occurrence piece. But if you wanted to increase activity and your goal was also to let's see more natural behavior of particular species, something like this would be really helpful.
And the behavioral diversity group will in fact be doing either 1, 0 or all-occurrence for exactly that reason.
So I did a study on alloparenting and colors monkeys. So I'm looking at a lot of different behaviors. I want to look at aggression between individuals. I want to look at affiliative behaviors, and then just how often the babies with each individual in the group, right? So a lot of those behaviors you can catch on point sample. Like I can have a map and I can show where every individual in the group is every 10 seconds. And I can get like big behaviors when she's nursing with her mom, when they're grooming. You can sometimes catch that on your point sample. But I'm not going to get when the baby's being held by a youngster, doesn't want mom to take it back, the baby starts crying, covers the mouth, so mom doesn't know that the baby wants to go back. After the last 3 seconds, I'm not going to catch that on the point sample. Or the aggressive behaviors, or when mom physically goes to take the baby back, I'm not going to catch that on the point sample. So I can do the all occurrence and catch it every time it happens.
I'm sorry, I think she had already started.
My refinement question is, you guys keep explaining why we would do all occurrence, which I totally agree, that's what I would choose to do. What I don't understand is what you're getting from adding the point sample to the all occurrence. So I don't see how you could not get estimated duration or a list of behaviors from all occurrence without point sample.
You would get them from the timed all occurrence, the one we did with the wild bear. But you won't get them from the panda one.
So you just
Without the
add
point
to
sample.
any interval because it creates balance. Is that?
No, because it creates, it allows, the interval has nothing to do with the all occurrence.
Okay.
It's only there for you to score on the beat. And in fact, if you're having trouble tracking, you know what? Just make your one little column with your intervals to score your point sample, and then just write the rest on blank side of the paper like you're writing a book. There's no time correlation in the Panda one at all for all occurrence. And that's why we have actually searched for a name for taking all occurrence this way. Each of us has, and we've never actually found one. It's actually something that my old boss used to do, taught us to do, and we used all the time. And you found a lot of studies where people are doing it now, but they always cite him as the person who first published with this methodology. So in order to distinguish it, I call it untimed all occurrence, and that's what's up here.
Back to the data sheet.
We can.
So when you said the point sample gives you bouts, it doesn't, because a bout is really like when the behavior starts and when it stops.
Right.
This isn't telling you anything about that. It's more like a flip book, and every 20 seconds you stop on a page in the cartoon flip book and you say, what is it doing? And that gives you a pretty good picture, right? If every page is one of those intervals, you have a very good estimate of the activity that the cartoon is doing. So you don't have
a better
the...
estimate than if you just continue doing the all occurrence. That's
If
what
you time it, it is an estimate, it's exact. But the problem is, not only is it hard to do, but because it's hard to do, unless you're really good at it or you have really simple behaviors, you might make a lot of mistakes. And so,
having the point sample just makes it easier to record.
Correct.
Yes, it doesn't give you more information.
It gives you-
just is an easier method of using all occurrence because you're not wasting time writing a start and a stop point. So if you recur on the beat, now you have a structure of intervals and it's just easier to record.
That's
so
exactly
if you go
right.
back to that slide that says what you get, if you go back to the slide that says what you get with each one, for the timed all occurrence, there's nothing crossed off, you get everything.
Right.
For this one, there's two things crossed off. So this is a way to get close to that timed all occurrence. You get almost everything,
Okay.
and you're probably going to get more accurate data because you're going to make fewer mistakes by going, oh, I was writing down the time and now I don't know when this behavior started and how long that happened.
Especially if there's more than one observer on the study.
Yeah, because they won't be scoring it the same way. But with this method, they're more likely to write the exact same thing down in the same situation.
So that's actually why I put one of these slides that are exactly the same, only with stuff crossed off after each exercise, so you can go back and look at what results can I actually pull out of this method, so that once you understand, and you'll see this in your group assignments you're going to get tomorrow, you're going to be asked to do things a certain way because you want to get an activity budget, or you want to get a frequency, or you want to get length of bouts, okay? And I've already kind of paired that stuff up a little bit for you, but if you go back to each of these last slides in each of the 4 examples, or 5 I guess, no 4, it'll tell you point blank, this data method works to give you this kind of result, okay? Thank you for your question.
There's mostly off that stuff. But so if you have video data, where you're taking it off of the video, your best method is always going to be the timed all occurrence. That's going to give you
Depends on what
everything.
you want.
Okay.
It depends on what you want. So with the Panda Cubs, we had 24-hour time-lapse video for like, I don't know, the first year and a half there was. Right now, who's going to read all that? And it's time-lapse, so you're not going to get all occurrence anyway. So we literally came in at the beginning of each of our shifts, and we sat at the previous night's video, and we would just skip ahead to the time data points, point sample, and score. Because you can't do anything else. So it depends on what you were after. In that scenario, we were just looking at, the time budget for overnight.
But it's usually on the practicality side, so kind of like what we got to with this, is that this is a more practical,
Yes.
easier way.
Yes.
In an ideal world, we have all the time. Absolutely
Exactly. Everything would be perfect.
Time occurrence gets you all the data.
Not only is it more practical, but this is completely valid for publishing a study.
At any level.
Yeah.
I think what might help after working that out can't compare this to anything. So I know that you've been saying for each one, it depends on what you're looking for, but for me, I have no idea what that means.
Okay.
Because so maybe it might help as we go to different ways of giving an example of this would be used for this. Because
Well,
it doesn't.
it's interesting you should
Yeah.
say that. Because we added a little quiz to just that effect at the end, if we managed to get to it today, at the end of the thing. It's all a little bit, to be fair, don't feel bad that you're there, because you should be there, okay?
Well, no,
At
I
some point.
understand.
It's a bit
hard.
circular.
Well, with it all kind of coming at you, I have nothing to connect it to. And so I'm kind of thinking real time, okay, if I'm looking at our draft and I want to figure something out, why would I use this? But the way it's presented, I can't connect it. So if you give real examples, it might be an easier way for us to kind of go, oh, that would work in this situation and that. Because as of now, it's just a lot of words.
Okay, I tried to do that, but I don't think I did.
Partially, once you learn all the different types, and you can go back and look at your slide of what you get, your research questions can be very specific. Do I increase stereotypic behaviors or decrease stereotypic behaviors or not change them when I add this enrichment, right? So what do you care about?
Stereotypic behaviors.
Right.
Okay, then you think about when you're writing your epigram, whether they're fast or short, so you're going to know if they're state or event behaviors. And if they're short behaviors, do you want to use point sample alone?
I don't know, all that's completely above my head.
If you're watching for 1 second, and the people go out for 1 second, are you going to catch a short behavior?
I would.
Is it likely?
I don't know.
If a behavior lasts 10 minutes and another behavior lasts 1 second, which one are you more likely to see when the people goes up?
Well, the other one.
The 10-minute behavior, right? So, if you're looking for very quick stereotypic behaviors, are you going to want to use a point sample?
You're going to want to do something that's going to.
No, you're right, you're perfect.
Yeah.
You're going to want to do something that's going to catch those short behaviors, okay? And the all occurrence, whether it's timed or untimed, will do that for you, okay? And I think the reason you're having trouble making these connections is because there's just too many words that are new and you don't understand what we mean by state and point sample and all occurrence, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's all in
and
one picture.
as you start to become familiar with those, it'll make more sense. This lecture has way more detail and specifics in the handouts, in the PowerPoints, than any of the other lectures you've seen us do. And the reason for that is exactly that, is I don't expect you to walk away going, woo, I'm ready to go, because you're not going to get that in 4 hours. This is not possible, especially if you don't have any experience or background with it. The idea here is these PowerPoints are going to be a reference that you can kind of go back and, you know what, I'm just going to study points. I'm just going to get point sample. That's exercise 2. I'm just going to do that one for a while till I understand and flip back and forth in the hypothetical database and the results and the graph. And just make sure I get it. And the other thing is he's taping, with the exception of the Panda video, he's taped all the videos. And you have the workbook and the epigrams. So practice on your own. Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't give you the Panda video. I just couldn't.
So, but I was going to finish your question because I think this will make you feel more comfortable with it. So if you're looking at, you want to decrease stereotypic behavior, that's your goal. How do you know if you decrease it? If there's going to be less time doing it, right?
Well, right, yeah.
So you're going to want to have some sort of measure that tells you how much time you spent doing stereotypic behavior. So you can go, okay, with point sample, I get an estimate of that. So I can use point sample, right? With time value occurrence, I get that. So I could use time value occurrence. Do I think I'm good enough to do time value occurrence? If you are, you can do that. If not, say, okay, I need to do point sample so I can get this is how long they did this, right? So when you ask your research question, it's easy. Just go through the pages. If I do point sample, can I get the time they spent doing stereotypic behaviors? Yes. Okay. I can use this one. That makes sense. Right? So once you know what you get from each one, then you can go back and say, what's my research question? Okay, for this one, I care about how many behaviors they're doing. I don't care how long they did them for, right? I'm just trying to increase behavioral diversity. I don't care how long you did it for.
I don't care how often they did each behavior, I just want to know how many behaviors they did, then I could just use 1, 0, right? So once you know your research question and you have that slide for each of the types, you can figure out, I think, which one to use.
Can I just interject here? How many of you are kind of in the same place? Maybe a little better off, but not, seriously, if I show hands. Okay. I have a proposal. You guys go through this stuff, try and resource some of the videos. Don't worry about the tiger one, the first one, just forget that, okay? Just work on the point sample and the all of you can do. You can do the bear video in the wild, but use the system that we used for the panda video. So you'll be looking at things like alert. I think the only event behavior is alert. So do that in the middle, and then the other one's on the point sample. Okay? I can explain this better tomorrow if you want me to. Practice it a little bit. And then she's out of the room now, so maybe we can just decide better now. What we can do is the next time I come back, we'll be building enrichment. This is the end of the lectures, okay, today. So what we can do is schedule me to come back a little bit extra time to sit down with you guys who are really at sea and walk through it on a more individual basis. And save your questions, and yeah, does that sound doable? Okay? So I'll talk to, we're having a manager's meeting later, and I'll see if we can work that into whatever the next schedule is. It may be a while, that's the only thing. Can you fill in the meantime as people, if they're trying to take their baselines or whatever? So Darren knows how to do all this stuff.
Oh, I know.
So, because he tells you all the time. And I know some of you do, obviously, have taken these things before too. So there's that resource. But push comes to shove, I'm happy to spend some time with whoever. Ideally, if we can get a small group together instead of you here and you here. And the other thing is I can do it by Skype or something too, without even being here. So can we figure something out later that'll help? Okay. Because it's about 25% maybe, so. Okay. Okay. Carly, I'm going to go through this really fast so we can get to EIR. So, besides behaviors, there's other ways to study behavior on Instagram. Just some examples, I'm not going to go into detail of them, and I don't think any of you are doing these in your group projects. But I do use these a lot for enrichment stuff. You can use location. Most of these are all point samples, okay? So location, bam, Kelly's mentioned she just said she had a map on the beach, she marked where everybody was on the map, okay? You do that, you come up with a graph that looks like this. Woo-hoo! With enrichment, we brought them forward where the visitors can see them, okay? Also, we do this a lot with fish, and one of the easiest things we can do is just put electrical tape on the glass to mark what quadrant they're in, you know? And we love that, and the visitors are always picking ahead. You can do substrates. The only thing you really need to worry about there is what if they're part in one substrate and part in the other, just like with the location. All right? So just come up with a rule. It's whatever substrate is left nostrils on. I don't care. It doesn't matter as long as you all do it the same. I tend to do where's more than 50% of the body at, but whatever. Okay? And again, I also throw different kinds of graphs in here so you can see some different ones. This is one of the few times the pie chart is acceptable because there's only one condition, and that's with the enrichment. Body lengths away, we already talked about body lengths. We use these actually in enrichment studies and in a lot of social studies like mother, young, and things like that. So there's another kind of graph you can do where they just right on top of each other. Those are all point samples on the beeps. So what you can do is pick them all at the same time. And this is another good way to get a lot of data as long as you're looking at straight behaviors, long behaviors, not short behaviors. Okay? So on the beep 1, I write down the behavior, where, on my map, what the substrate is, and how far away from the enrichment. So if you kind of read through this, oh, the bear was up in the tree, the enrichment's on the ground, they climbed down, oh, they walked up to the enrichment, oh, they sniffed the enrichment, and touched it, and then laid down less than a body length, and then picked it up and carried it into the pool, right? The key thing here is, because you're taking them all on the same beat, you're tagging them together. So you know not only what behavior they did, but where, on what substrate, and how far in the enrichment they did it. Okay? So for those of you who are already into analysis phases, you can see that there's a whole bunch of different ways you can put this together to analyze for some interesting stuff. And there's some examples there. Oh, this is not good. PowerPoint just, okay. Let's see if we can, it's not looking good, guys. Just okay, so the next thing is you can actually get indirect observations. You'll hear people talk about this. And that simply means that you manage to get some information about the animal's behavior without actually seeing the animal doing it. Okay? So, you know, you put the feeder out with X amount of food in it in the morning, and you come back and 3 hours later and take the feeder out and it's empty. Okay, chances are pretty good that one of the animals or more in the enclosure ate food rather than, you know, a whole bunch of rabbits running in and stealing carrots. Okay? And another example is you saw what the panda does with substrate piles. You don't have to see the interaction. You got a pile, you go away, an hour later you come back and it's flat. Something happened. Okay? And you can actually take data that way if you have a lot of choices. Okay, we already talked about this. We're not going to do any hypothesis testing statistics. So all these things you may have heard of, p-value, correlation, experiments, or anything like that, don't worry about that. We're not going there. Okay, let's go to university for that. What we're doing is what's called descriptive statistics, or the formal name in the book is exploratory data analysis, which I think is much better. It's descriptive. And the things we're mostly going to look at is mean, percent, and rate. And I probably don't need to teach any of those things to this group. I usually have to teach them all. Okay. Making a graph, just a couple of pet peeves. The x-axis, by convention, it's not required, but this is the convention. The x-axis is going to be what you measured. Okay, here's behaviors, what you were looking at. The y-axis is what you found, how much time. Okay, and the z is the differentiation one. Please, and I'll show you an example of where you can switch those. You can play around with this. This is just by convention. Okay. Please only graph interesting things. All right. If there were 8 other behaviors on here that were all 0, don't put them in there. Just say somewhere they were all 0. And move on. Okay? There's nothing to learn from that. All right? That just makes graphs harder to read. Round off your numbers for graphing. Whatever decimal point you're going to go to in your data set, that's fine. But when you graph, round them off. And when we're looking at 100% of behavior, you don't even really need to put a decimal point at all in it. Okay? And don't crowd your graphs. That's what really messes me up. And please don't use pie charts for everything. These data and these data are the same, and see how easy it is to see what's going on there and how much work it is here. And imagine if now we're looking at 4 different things instead of 2. And pie graphs are only good if there's one condition. Okay? If you can use one graph. Okay, so yes, I whizzed straight through those things. Yeah. An hour. Sorry, I'm just thinking. Okay. In general, remember I said you have to know how you're going to analyze the data before you even start taking data. And hopefully, especially with all this discussion, you now understand what we mean by that. You have to understand what you want to come out with. And that's going to drive what methodology you use and what behavior you use. Okay? So I gave you some common ones here. Okay. 3 of the kind of common things we do in enrichment studies are baseline versus enrichment condition, and we've talked a lot about those. And in the next slide, I've actually even referred to the specific exercises that we did where you can see examples of that. Okay? The next one is looking at enrichment versus non-enrichment, or different enrichment items, like we did with the alfalfa and the pine shadings and da-da-da. So I referred to exercise 2A and 4. But then I made another one, it's hypothetical, with a whole bunch of different enrichment things, and baseline, by the way. No, in essence, no enrichment. And 6 different things. And these, by the way, your ETH is never going to be active inactive, right? Because that's just silly. Come up with, something that's got a little more rigor to it. But this is just to make the graphs easy. So this is starting to get to be a pretty crowded graph, and that's fine. You have all those data you want to put out there. Okay, so it's pretty easy to see that if you're looking at activity, the deer scent, the pine scent, and the ball are your winners. Yeah? Does it make sense? Okay. Now, this is getting a little awkward to look at, and so this is a good example of when you might want to switch those axis labels. All right? And this is exactly the same data. Okay, everything's the same, it's just I switched this one and this one. Okay, so now we've got the items along here because there's only 3 behaviors. Okay? This is not the convention, but it's a lot easier to read. So, if there's no reason to change it, stick with the convention because everybody will be more comfortable. But if it makes sense to change it, change it. It's okay. Just make sure everything's labeled properly. And then the last common one is doing a comparison between some characteristic of the enrichment. And the examples I have here are the type of enrichment. So I took these data and I combined these 2 into natural enrichment, these 2 into undetermined, whether they're natural or artificial, because they are undetermined, and these 2 as artificial enrichment. Okay, glommed them together, averaged them, and lo and behold, now you can look at, instead of the individual enrichment, what type are they? Are they natural? These are the results we get. Okay? This is actually something we don't do in most of the world because most places they don't care what it looks like. They just want the animal to do stuff. But this is more common in the U.S. and really the U.S. There's a lot of places where you're not allowed to put artificial stuff on in view of the part. Okay? So it's important to know these things can have some really great benefit to the animal, but we can't put them out. That doesn't mean you didn't use them. Put them behind the scenes. Put them in the night house, put them in the back area, whatever. Put them out when the visitors aren't here, whatever. Okay? Another thing is actual materials. So again, hypothetical, plastic, paper, or natural stuff like wood. Okay? And then finally, looking at the categories, which I do a lot. So all the different enrichments we gave the chimps, let's look at what categories we're hitting. Because remember, we talked about when you're planning your overall enrichment strategy for a group of animals, you want the weight of each category to be meaningful to that species. So cognitive is going to be far more important to a chimpanzee, I would imagine, than it is to a deer. Okay? So when we're looking at their responses to that should tell us, okay, that they're far more interested in cognitive, that if we have a similar thing for deer, you would get very different results. Does that make sense? So if you're taking these data, these are all point samples again, and you've got this database going, once the stuff is going in there, you can analyze this any way you want. You can glom things together or average them, however you want, and keep going back to that data set as it grows and grows. Okay? And I'm sorry I'm having to rush through all this, but If we have time, I'll come back to this. Some of you may have already done this. There's 2 times things happen when you really need to, I think, manipulate the data, okay? One is if you're watching an animal and you get a not visible score that's getting up there, okay? And let's say 10%, which if you're getting 10%, you should really look at how you're taking data because you really don't want that high number. But let's say you have 10%. And let's say you have 10% not visible in baseline, but not in enrichment. Okay. Really, your numbers, and you want activity budget, your numbers are going to be hard to compare because for baseline, you really only have information for 90% of the time. Okay. So the entire time they're not visible, they could be playing with something, and that, but you don't know that. And so that's not reflected in the data you've taken. And so doing a comparison can be off, all right? So that's one time when I might want to excerpt that 10% of the time and just look at the remaining 90% as if it were 100%, okay? It doesn't entirely fix the problem, but it makes the comparison a little bit more even. And again, so I walked through how to do this and gave you all fake data set to show how it's done for the second situation. The second situation is very much the same, except if you're looking at baseline and enrichment phases, they don't have that enrichment at baseline, therefore they don't have the opportunity to interact with it. So you can be in the same boat, right? So in that case, we don't touch the baseline, we would excerpt interacting with enrichment, the new enrichment from the enrichment condition, and then we can compare what they're doing outside of interacting with enrichment. So again, I walked these through. I was going to spend more time on them, but I kind of don't want to because there's a couple more important things we have to make sure we get to.
With respect to what you just said, can you give an example of how you could incorporate indirect observation into the data to make it solid data? I don't understand.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a few slides in.
Oh, okay.
I had to make sure I answered the question, but I believe. Okay, so that's it for the formal method. Remember, we had 3 methods. All of that was the first one, okay, and you survived. That's the hard part. The second one was what we were calling and it's always in quotes, the express method, all right? And I'm going to spend virtually no time on this because it's just showing you how we're going to cut corners on the formal one, okay? So it's pretty straightforward. We do the same thing, but we're cutting corners. And here's an example of a potentially indirect observation histogram. Okay? I'm going to, instead of taking data every 20 seconds, I'm going to take data whenever I can. Like when I walk past the enclosure on my way to coffee break. When I come in the morning, when I go to lunch, when I come back from lunch. Okay? This is not acceptable research. But you know what? It can be really useful for us, especially if the alternative is nothing. All right? And so I'm going to walk by the enclosure. Is the animal using the enrichment? No? Well, then can I tell that it did use the enrichment since the last time I was here? Okay? Or it's not using the enrichment, but it doesn't look like it used it since the last time. Okay? And you actually can go through and graph that. I'm not sure entirely how appropriate that is to graph, to go to that degree of rigor with it, but you're definitely going to be able to get a good idea of what's going on. And you could even possibly apply an EIR number to it, which you'll learn about that in a minute, to those kind of indirect things. Okay? I do want to give you a real example where it's not indirect, but the sample point was every hour on the hour. The ethogram was 2 days. On the new platform and visible to the public, actually it was visible, sorry, I apologize, it was visible to the public, not visible to the public. Okay? There was a slow Loris in another city we were doing a workshop in, and this wasn't one of the regular groups, but they begged us. They had an idea they wanted to try, and so we pulled that into the workshop. So the Solors in the daytime was never seen, even by keepers, like ever. Okay? And she was always in her little hiding hole in the back. So what they did was they built a really nice platform right in the front of the mesh enclosure with a new catwalk. They went back to the old box. We broke some rules and put it up at night. Keepers put it up at night right before they went home. Because they're not nocturnal animals, you're not going to explore it in the daytime. Okay? So the next day we were in class all day, and that group had permission to send one person out every hour on the hour to run out and have a look. Can I see the animal or not? Okay? And I'm standing up there lecturing, and the person comes in the back of the room and sits down every hour on the hour, and I'm like, shaking her head no. Okay, so 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, she comes in, big old smile on her face. Yeah! That's the Lord's at 11 o'clock in the morning, in front of a whole crowd of visitors, with sound asleep on the new platform. Okay? Much to our amazement. And she was still there at 12, 1, and 2. Now, in that hour, she could have, Lord knows what, gotten up, put on a tutu, and danced a jig, I don't know, but she's a slow horse. What's the chances that she did anything but stay sleeping in the same body position for 4 hours? Or for the first time in umpteen years, she's fully visible to a crowd of really loud, excited public for the first time. Okay? So this is breaking all the rules for getting real data. But my gosh, this is really useful information. That team's now able to go to their supervisors and say, look what we did with this one simple thing. Let's make some serious modifications to this, and we'll have it out here, all the time. Right? That's valuable. So, so, with this express method, you can really get a good idea of what's going on with your enrichment. Okay? You're not really going to be able to do much extrapolation out with it, but you can get a kind of an educated starting point, yes, to it. Okay? Okay. I'm going to sit here and play with this and try and fix it for you. Okay. So the third method is the EIR, Enrichment Item Rating, Interaction Rating System. And you're all going to be doing this in your groups. Okay?
For those of you who aren't here yesterday, I'm Kylie's. I'm not as loud as her, so I've got a microphone. And if you're going to be standing there, you gotta let me teach. So the third type of assessment that we're going to talk about is the enrichment interaction rating. All that is you give the enrichment, you'll watch it for some period of time, and you give a number to describe that enrichment. So the number is going to just kind of describe the event, depending on your ethogram. Your ethogram is just going to be, this is a 0, this is a 1, this is a 2, 3. You can have it go up to 3, to 5, to 10, whatever you want. This is really good for assessing safety, simply because you're there watching and you can see if there's a problem. It's good for behaviors elicited, also because you're watching. And it's really good for enrichment assessment initially when you first give it and long term. And you can get an extrapolation for other individuals or situations.
It won't work for me.
So one kind of limitation of this is it's looking at the interaction. So if your goal for your study is to reduce aggression during feeding time, this gives you 0 information about that, because all you have is how the animal interacted with the enrichment. So you're not going to be able to use this all the time, but if you're really curious about the interaction, this can be useful. So enrichment interaction ratings have been around for a long time, and a lot of people have tried to come up with a universal system for all animals in all situations, and nobody's done it yet. And so traditionally what we have so far is this, where you have a number value that describes how intense the interaction was, how long it lasted, what the behavioral diversity that it promoted was, and then you assign a numerical value. So a good example is 0 is no interaction, 1 is some minimal interaction, 2 is moderate, and 3 is high interaction. So, spending some time with Val, you guys have probably picked up on the fact that Shay believes in goal-oriented enrichment. So, how do you analyze if you've achieved your goal? It's going to be specific to what you're looking at, which is why there isn't really a good universal system for this. So, when you write your ethogram of what a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 means, you want to keep in mind what you're looking at, what your research question is. Val actually had something she wanted to say about that.
Yeah, really quickly, I know that something's coming out of AZA soon, that I think, I'm not sure, because I'm not in on the planning group, but I think it's being advertised as an enrichment assessment tool. And it's great, but it really assesses welfare by their response to enrichment, which is a good thing to know, but it's not going to, as it stands now, unless they make some changes, okay, it's not actually going to tell you whether you met your enrichment goal or not. So, and I've seen a lot of these other things that people are selling, so just really look at these things before you buy them. Some of them are great and have a lot of use to them, but they, to my knowledge, there still isn't one that tells you if you've met your goal or not, which is a different thing as to how well their welfare is in the presence of enrichment. Those are different. Okay?
So I think that this, although it seems easy, maybe you guys don't quite get it yet, so we're going to do an example that I hope will clarify it for you. So this is
10 minutes.
something that Tiger team in San Diego did. Their goal was to stimulate natural foraging behavior, more specifically to approximate the kill, targeting behaviors of bringing down and killing the prey. So I've got a quick description here, but I kind of think you guys have an image of tiger bringing down prey, and we're short on time, so I'm going to move forward. This is our example ethogram for that. So just really quick read this and kind of keep in mind, 0's an interaction that does not relate to killing prey. 1, we've got some quick behaviors here, swats, claws, and bites. 2, they hold the enrichment with their paws or teeth in a passive manner. And 3, actively works to maintain its bite or hold enrichment using legs, body weight, claws to assist. So we really want it to be an approximation of the kill, so we really want to be seeing 3, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So, I didn't realize it was going to start the video.
That's all right.
Okay, so I want you guys to watch this video and give it a 0, 1, 2, or 3 in your head while you watch.
I don't think we're gonna make it through.
The chain was wrapped around a tree limb in such a way that it would come down, but that it would stop when it touched the ground. It wouldn't release it any further. Why don't you stop?
Whoa. Almost.
So you can see it's coming down.
Yay!
Okay, so when you're evaluating this type of data, you're going to ask 2 questions. And the first one is, was it safe? The second one is, did I meet my goal? If your answer to either question is no, you need to revise, rebuild, retest, and reassess till you get a yes. And then once you get a yes, you can put it on your approved item list and use it. So for this one, what do you guys think? Was it safe? Okay.
made out of? What was it made out of? Was it a rope or a chain?
That was a
Chain.
It's a chain.
It was determined by the student safe photographer.
Oh.
This was also 20.5 years ago, guys. Did you not see the 1997 on it?
Okay, so if you don't feel it's safe, don't use it with your animals, ever. And then did we meet our goal? So what value did you guys assign this in your heads?
Can we go back to that list again at the very end?
It's on your
Which,
Three.
So I'm hearing some ones, some threes, and some twos. Okay. So the team that worked with these tigers said it was safe. And they said it was a good interaction, but it didn't have all the things we were looking for, actively holding it down, using their claws and their arms and their whole body weight. So they said it was good, but it wasn't good enough. It was good enough at other things that they kept using it, but they came up with another idea. So they replaced the chain with the garage doors, pretty much safely covered in PVC, and they replaced the ball with a burlap sack filled with stuff. If you want to build it, it'll be in their supplemental materials, how to make it. Same ethogram. Give it a value in your head. So yeah, in that description, which I moved past, they talked about how once he grabs it, he's gonna hold and wait, right? So
you maybe can't tell, but the spring is actually partially open on this. He's working really hard.
So, was it safe? Okay. Did it meet the goal? What number did you give it? Okay, so everybody's more satisfied with this one. So, it's a good way to kind of answer that question. And the Tiger team that worked with them agreed with you guys. So I'm just quickly going to go over what you can do with an enrichment interaction rating. You can take average of all the ratings that you've taken over some period of time to get a good number. You can also look at overtime and see if the interaction continues to be as intense. And you can compare different enrichment items. So this graph is what those three things would look like. So you can compare the three different enrichment items and the intensity of the interaction. And the keepers that did this hypothetical graph were taking this graph over time, and you notice the trend. So after some period of time, the average interaction rating went from almost a 3 down to almost a 2. So because they were taking this data, they said, hey, this isn't good. We're going to give this boomer ball less often. And the enrichment interaction rating went back up. So if you're taking data this way, you're going to see trends more quickly than you might notice on your own. And it's kind of your animal's way of being able to tell you feedback. I'm bored with this now. You give it to me too much. So you can assess your goals over time. You know what, I'm not meeting my goal anymore. I was when I started. Now this feeder's too easy, and it's not meeting my goal, so I'm going to make it harder before I start getting it again. Does that make sense? And it's pretty easy, right? You just watch it, you give it a number, you got the information, you can do that for months and months.
You gotta write down the numbers more.
Yeah. And what the numbers mean, so when you look back at it, you know. All right, this is the same slide you had at the beginning. These first ones just because you're watching, these ones because you have an actual value, and now you get where the long-term use comes in. For me, that's the real beauty of the EIR. Yeah?
For EIR, is that something you guys are going to do with each individual? So in like an exhibit, you have 4 animals, you're going to do an EIR for each one of them. You always clump them together, and
you're having different EIRs for the different, you look at individuals, and if you're having different ones, then yeah, you need to track it with individuals.
But if you have an exhibit that has 60 deers in it, and you have 5 enrichment items out there, and there's 50 of them at this one, and they're all doing stuff, that's a strong interaction rating, right, for the group.
Yeah.
So it depends on the situation. Okay, that is it for me. Can I hand it back over?
Because we are out of time, we're gonna skip these. No time for the story of how I failed. Okay, so the very last thing in there is, and I've never spent time to go over this anyway, is just a little write-up of what you want to report when you're giving your report back to your supervisor or to the class or to a conference, whatever, okay? And so we just sort of gave the topics that you go through. Who are your animals? What was your goal or problem that you're working on? What methods did you use? And that includes analysis methodology. State whatever your interesting results were and use graphs. Explain what the results may or may, explain what you know from the results and what you don't know. Okay. Usually you'll come out with more questions than you went in with. And then that's where you, that's where you can make recommendations for the future. You know, I think what we need to do next is change the enrichment this way, or whatever, okay? And I gave you an example, which I'm not going to go through it all, of all of those things. It's in your Hoodinger. So, in summary, you really have to do some kind of assessment whenever you have new animals, new enrichment items, any kind of safety concern. If you're looking for how to make design modifications, you try new things, you need to look at the initial effectiveness to see if you're meeting your goal. But you also want to track long term, as Kylie said, to make sure you're not habituating them or they're just coming bored with it. Okay, you're not meeting your goal anymore. And the beauty about having an established system, whether it's the formal one or the EIR or whatever, is as long as you use the same methodology and the same ecogram, you can check in, you know, every 6 months and just do another couple of days of observation and do a quick comparison to what it was like 6 months ago, right? Even if it's the formal study. Once the formal study is done, keep all the data sheets and everything handy and check in every few months. All right? I love Tim Seuss. So I saw something I've never seen before since. This was the first workshop we did in South Africa many years ago. And this little guards, we had them install our class, and they were like, what are y'all doing? And lo and behold, one of the guards really took his job seriously. I've never seen America go after a visitor before. Not like that. So, we did have this little quiz. We're not going to do it now because we're out of time. But we will do it tomorrow. We'll take a few minutes in our small groups and just talk about, to help out. If your goal is to decrease aggression during feeding, what kind of methodology you're going to use and what your eat brand looks like. Okay? If your goal is to reduce clucking, how are you going to assess that? All right? So these are just a couple of examples to kind of get you thinking about it. So this isn't in your book. But yeah, let's find just a few minutes tomorrow.
If you want to be ready for that, if you want to study a little bit so you can get more out of it, look at that slide at the end of each thing, point sample and everything, and try and kind of see if you can remember what you get out of it.
So we have like 3 minutes for questions or comments or whatever. See? White out. This is the end of the Shaver Merchant Workshop lectures. So tomorrow, you all understand when you're coming, and that you're coming for 2 hours, not 1 hour.
And are we coming here?
No.
Inside of the paper building.
And so we're going to be in the 2 offices, but
For lunchtime.
When's the lunch?
just for that one,
Yeah, because the other one, you said you wanted to be the bigger one.
I'd rather be together, but yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll sort it out tomorrow, but if we can 12-ish of us. And we'll, have a little bit of chit chat together first, and then go over the assignments with you. And then you need to split up so you're not bothering each other, but you can't disappear, because we need to go back and forth constantly in the 2 hours between the 2 groups, okay? You'll have a handout at the beginning that tells you what your assignment is for the rest of the workshop for the projects. Okay? Thank you all for putting up with our rush at the end.